So I'm Jennifer Browdy, and welcome to the Books That Make the World Better podcast. I'm so excited to have with me today Leah Rampy. Am I getting your name right?
You
Please say
are?
it. Rampy.
Yes. Yeah, you've got it.
Um, the author of a really beautiful book called Earth and Soul, Reconnecting Amid Climate Chaos, which is not an easy topic to dive into. And so Leah approached it with a story that I thought I would ask her to share as we leap into our conversation today. So, Leah, welcome.
Thank you. And thank you for having me. Thank you for having me, Jennifer. I'm really happy to be here and to see where we take this conversation together. So,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. So would you like me to tell the story or read the story?
Oh, whichever you'd prefer. Either way.
Maybe I'll read it.
Sure.
So, so this is a story that it goes back, I believe, to the White Apache, is told by storyteller and mythologist Michael Meade. And it's a legend among some Native American tribes that's told by elders in times of great difficulty. The story is of an old woman deep in a cave weaving the world. Light and shadows dance around her as she weaves. She's been weaving a long lifetime, and the garment born of her dreams and dedication is of exquisite beauty. The only time she leaves her loom is to go far back into the cave to stir the contents of a pot simmering on the oldest fire in the world. It contains the roots and seeds of all the plants, herbs, and grains that feed the earth. If she does not stir this elemental soup, it may burn, and who knows what trouble that may cause. Living in the cave with her is a black dog who dozes while the woman works at her loom. When she rises to tend the pot, the dog rouses. While she shuffles slowly, after all she is very old, to the back of the cave, the dog grabs a loose thread in his teeth and begins to pull. As the old woman painstakingly makes her way to and from the fire, the dog tugs at various threads, pulling until finally the weaving comes apart and the threads are scattered across the cave floor. Upon her return, the old woman sees the product of her long labors in disarray, her efforts turned to naught. She gazes upon what remains, sitting silently for some time. Slowly, she bends to pick up a thread. Soon the original pattern is forgotten as a new and previously unimagined design of great beauty takes shape in her mind's eye. Guided by this vision, her old hands begin to weave a beautiful tapestry from the chaos.
So tell us, why did you begin a book about earth and soul with that story?
Right, right. Well, first of all, I think some of the old stories have such amazing capacity for the ways that they begin to stick with you and work on you.
Mm-hmm.
And they don't, you have to sit in openness to really come to a sense of the full meaning. They can work on us individually and collectively,
Mm-hmm.
and they shape themselves, I think, around where we are in our own thought process, our own heart and soul unfolding. So this is a story that worked on me in different ways over a period of time as I had heard it told. And the story, I think, of unweaving, the unraveling of earth is reminiscent of our wise elder Joanna Macy, who speaks of these different stories that we live in. The story of business as usual, the great unraveling, and the great turning.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, the woman encapsulates both that unraveling and then being in that place, those, I call them edge times, or we might say on that threshold
Mm-hmm.
between what is unraveling and what is yet to be born. between dying and rebirth. And she's holding all of that. She's holding all of that as she sees what the dog has done, and that, the way in which her incredibly beautiful fabric is now totally decimated.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things I love is that she does not jump in to berate the dog, or I had someone ask me, why doesn't she get rid of the dog? Like, because that's not the story. That's not possible.
Hmm.
It's not possible in the story for her to eliminate the dog. What's only possible is her to be with what is. And I love the fact that she waits. She looks, she ponders. She's in this place, perhaps of mourning, although we don't know that, perhaps holding grief and possibility that is in that chaotic mourning.
Mm-hmm.
And then when it is given to her, then she begins to reweave. And of course, we do understand that it is life that happens in the chaos. Even though we would like to believe it happens while we have everything under control, we know in our depth that's not true.
Mm.
So, we could talk about it, I think, for a long time, and I do pick it up time and again as we go through the book, because I just think there's so many ways that it can land with us. But that's how it lands for me much of the time anyway.
Mm-hmm. So the dog is contemporary circumstances. The
It could be,
mm-hmm.
for sure it could be. Right, for sure it could be. Um, the way in which, I could make all sorts of stories of it, but I want people to interpret it in ways that is alive for them. I could see a story of where that is what we have done to Earth.
Yeah.
We've unraveled, not all, for sure.
No.
We have a lot of beauty and, things that are awe-inspiring and persistent and resilience and amazing and life-giving around us. And yet we can also look around and see that there's much that's been unraveled. And that can't be recovered. Not everything can be recovered. And some of what has been unraveled is yet to be made apparent to us. So that is certainly one element that I think of when I think about how we are in these edge times. And then it invites us into that question of what's waiting to be born. What's waiting to be born. And of course, she's using the threads that were there too. It isn't as if she went out and bought brand new threads somewhere.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
She's weaving this tapestry, but she didn't go back to shear the sheep or wherever those threads came from,
Mm-hmm.
spin the
Mm-hmm.
flax.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, how am I using what I've been given to
Yeah.
create anew? Yeah.
Well, the earth, I see my interpretation. I see the
Yeah,
old
good.
woman as Gaia. And Gaia is endlessly regenerative and will reweave, whatever we end up doing to
Right.
this planet, it will continue.
And has, we can think about the great extinctions, the
Mm-hmm.
great extinction events, that have
Mm-hmm.
happened. Earth has had a lot of trials and tribulations,
Yes.
and still every time has picked up and rewoven to something more beautiful. It does not mean that everything from before is preserved, and we happen to be living in an absolutely, prejudice, she says, but an absolutely glorious and beautiful time
Mm-hmm.
for Earth. We're so fortunate to be in this time we live in, and it is heartbreaking for us to look at that and to say not all of that will be able to be rewoven,
Mm-hmm.
because some of the threads are too damaged. And still,
Mm-hmm.
I believe our challenge in these times is to reclaim, reweave, strengthen. It's not that they're gone, but they've been frayed. Those threads that we have to the living earth. It's it brings us to this whole conversation about human exceptionalism and how we have seen ourselves as apart from the living world around us. And um, that is an important opportunity for us, I think, to claim how we can step in to support Gaia's reweaving.
Yeah, that seems to be the key, right? The key for humans now, humans who care, humans with compassion and awareness. But it's hard. So you talk about the spectrum between hope and despair,
Mm.
and we have to kind of embrace the grief and the love that we feel. I mean, there is no grief without love. They go together.
Mm-hmm.
So what I find in working with young people sometimes is that they can't hold the grief, and so they prefer to numb out, and not just
Mm-hmm.
young people, many of us, you know.
Yes.
Yeah, and there are a million distractions and a million, um, compelling ways to numb out, and meanwhile those threads keep unraveling. And so I think one of the tasks of our time now is to call people back from that great numbing.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm really interested in what strategies you can offer for calling people back.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm so interested in that conversation too. Um, and there are a number of things that show up for me. So drag me back if I wonder I wonder how too far I feel from your question and don't get there. Um, you know, it's understandable, as you've said. It's understandable that we want to numb ourselves, that we want to look away, that we want to just, bury our heads in the sand because some of what we um, have to experience around us is really quite painful. And one point I would make is that to the degree we numb our capacity for grief, we are also numbing our broad spectrum of emotions. So we are numbing our capacity for joy and delight
Mm-hmm.
and, relishing this amazing world and the awe and wonder. So it isn't as if we can just hone certain emotions and be open to them and then numb all the rest. It doesn't work that way.
Mm-hmm.
So one invitation is to remember that the grief we feel is in measure to the love we have for beings. And we know that when we think about humans who are dear to us and
Mm-hmm.
how deeply we grieve, the dearer the humans are. So it does remind us of the depth of our love and, breaks our hearts open,
Mm-hmm.
which we think they're supposed to be protected. Our hearts are incredibly resilient. And in the breaking open, then there is all this availability for greater compassion for each other and for this world around us. So, bearing witness, I think, is an important spiritual practice, an important human practice
Mm-hmm.
to bear witness to loss. Um, we're not particularly good at grieving and supporting each other in kind of a communal grief in our culture. Um, we have learned somehow to feel uncomfortable with grief and to want people to just get over it, get some closure and move on.
Right.
Okay, you know. Um,
Hmm.
and so there are some of those opportunities for communal grief then and ritual that we could begin to reestablish. I talked to a podcaster who told me, as we were talking about grief, about her own experience of losing um, a bird from her yard that she just felt so attached to. And it, for some reason, this particular bird, when she saw it, that it was dead, just really brought her to her knees. And she didn't want to grieve alone, so she just reached out and put a little sign on a post somewhere to say, I'm going to do this ritual of funeral for this bird if anybody wants to join me. And there were like 3 people who showed up.
Mm-hmm.
And so they had this very meaningful, symbolic and literal burial of a bird, and acknowledged in that all the other losses that people have felt. And the point of this, I think, is then we're not alone.
Mm-hmm.
And part of what happens when we cut ourselves off of any dimension of the emotional capacity that we've been giving is we cut ourselves off from other beings and we become really lonely. And we know, I mean, you know that, you know all the stats about the epidemic of loneliness for people, and we just don't talk about it a lot, that a part of that is an epidemic of loneliness that we have for the living beings, that,
Mm.
deep in our bones somewhere, our ancestors were deeply connected to that particular ecology around them. If they were not, we wouldn't be here,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's as simple as that. If they didn't know what plants were blooming and when they were blooming and which ones were edible and which ones were poisonous and how to walk out of the shelter and look for predators and what water was safe to drink, none of us would exist. So somewhere in our DNA is that understanding we have that we are connected to this living world. We are not separate and apart. And
Mm-hmm.
the more we try to deny and separate and other, then the lonelier we are.
Mm-hmm.
So I've thrown a lot of things into that into that question. So feel free to pick it apart or move it on if you want to, or ask again if I didn't get there.
No, no, that was wonderful. Yeah, I think there is this deep loneliness that most of us think of as within the human
Mm-hmm.
circle of
Right.
relationships, but I think you're suggesting it goes deeper and broader than that.
Yes.
And that, I certainly have always been somebody who looks for connection out in the woods and out on the beach and out in the wild, and I find it, and it feeds me, but most people aren't doing that.
Mm-hmm.
So I know you've led pilgrimages that intentionally invite people into that relationship with the natural world, which is a part of us that we have forgotten how to relate
Right.
to. Yeah. And so I'd love you to talk about that work that you've been doing, and how we can do more of it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I love the way in which you wove into that sentence the reminder of that, we do have this conversation about going out there, when in fact there is no out there. Right?
Right, right.
Now that's how, dictionary definitions often consider nature as being other than human. And I think we want to keep challenging that over and over and reminding ourselves, we can come back to this, but changing our language, reclaiming a
Mm-hmm.
language of kinship and a language of connection is so important, because you know in your work how much language shapes the way we think. And so as we can help each other grab that language back from just being automatic
Yeah.
to really what we want to hold and value, and a reflection of our intentions, then that's a guide, that's a helper for us in doing that. So, pilgrimages were part of work I did. I was the executive director for 6 years at Shalem Institute for Spiritual Formation, and was really privileged to lead, I don't know, 10, 12, something like that, pilgrimages to many different locations. And almost crept into my speaking was to say sacred locations, and I pulled that back because that's
Mm-hmm.
another example of, really, we know it's
Mm-hmm.
all sacred, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's all sacred, all life. um, and some have that designation and have been places of pilgrimage for uh, hundreds, thousands of years. The Isle of Iona off the coast of Scotland is an example of that, where pilgrims have traveled there for several thousand years, really, to that place. And it's considered a thin place, a place where there seems to be very little distance between I think the ancients would say heaven and earth, between the past and the future. And oftentimes they're places of, they're like a meeting place, ecotones, where different ecosystems come together, where sky and earth meet, or where sea and land meet,
Mm-hmm.
or forest and prairie. And just bring us into a reminder of the immense, history, beauty. I mean, it's this combination of deep time and resilience, and remembering that some of these webs of life are so much older than our human ancestors.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we're thriving long before there was anything walking upright that seemed to be like the humans as we think we know ourselves today.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a real privilege to go with people and for a week or 10 days, whatever it is, to just hold space for being present with what is around us as it is. And to do that as a group, to do that as a community
Mm-hmm.
is so rich. So it's this opportunity to set the day to day aside for a little bit, to move together with an intention, to make the travel to and from part of a pilgrimage itself, and to not assume that it's about getting there. It's like it's not that there's somewhere to go. It's that you are here.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So that has been really rich for me. I lead retreats as well, and I try to do the same things, except that when we're doing retreats, it's our pilgrimages in place. You
Mm-hmm.
know, we're not going somewhere, but yet we use the mind and heart of a pilgrim to be fully present and open and available. So we're traveling on
Mm-hmm.
an inward journey.
Mm-hmm. And of course, that's not common at all in our culture. None of what you just described is common at all. I
Right,
mean,
right. Yeah.
so it's very countercultural what you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, just make the idea of pausing to make time for quiet reflection, and that there's something of value in that.
Yeah.
It seems like it belongs to maybe monks or lamas, but not ordinary householders immersed in our busy lives, right? But
Right.
but I think that is the invitation you're offering.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, I think, somewhere we have learned from our more dominant Western culture, and I always want to be clear here that, when we're talking about that, as you know, we're not saying that this is true of every society and certainly not every group of people, even within, let's say, the North American continent, Turtle Island. That there are a number of differences, and still there is this kind of dominant colonial industrial culture where we've learned to value the rational mind almost to the exclusion
Mhm.
of senses, heart, and soul. These times of retreat or these times of pilgrimage, or even what my colleague and I called pilgrimage in our own backyard, these are a pause button that says, okay, okay, Leah, out of your head. How do you listen with your whole being? You
Mhm.
know, because I'm going to tell you, trees are probably not going to speak to us in English. Trees will speak, I believe. They will speak to us,
Mhm.
but they're going to speak through our senses, through a nudge, through this little heart sense. And they speak in a much slower and deeper and uh, extended period of time, as opposed to, so Jennifer, what do you think? What should I do? Tell me now. you know,
Right.
that is sort of what we adapt ourselves to thinking is the way of the
Mhm.
world,
Mhm.
you know. when in fact we're really pushing against the rhythms of nature. We're really pushing against it. And of course, you really can't do that. You just pretend you do, and it kind of leaves you battered.
Mm, yeah. And our whole earth is battered these days.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. I mean, you talk about relaxing from the internal pressure to figure things out
Hmm.
and just listening, deep listening to what wants to emerge. And that resonates so much with me. And yet I still spend a lot of time just busy in my head trying to figure things out.
Yeah, yeah,
you
I
know,
got that. Yes, I know. I
yeah.
could hold up my notepad here with my list of things to
To-do
do.
list. Yes.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So it seems that one has to be very intentional to calm that busy mind down. And so, I mean, obviously, a meditation practice or just walking meditation in the woods, which is what I prefer. I find it hard to sit still on a cushion, but I can quiet my mind in the woods and big also with
Yes.
big rocks help me to slow down.
Oh,
You know,
yeah.
big. We have a lot of big boulders around here.
That's terrific. Yeah.
So, and then in the summer, the ocean. The ocean is a wonderful source of calm and just
Yeah.
um, slowing down. So this seems to be a time. So another thing is that we're living in this time of acceleration, right, where everything seems to be speeding up, and we're subject to so much information that's bombarding us all the time, and most of it's bad, lots of bad news. And so again, back to that numbness.
Hmm.
um, Often when I quiet my mind, what comes is the grief and the sadness and the despair. And so maybe you can talk a little bit about how to acknowledge the grief and despair, and yet so the
Hmm.
both end. Yeah,
Hmm.
can you talk about that?
Yeah. Sure. And just to say, I mean, as you and I talk about this, I think, I would say, and I'm sure you would agree with me, we don't want to make any of this sound like, and it's so easy. This is just the three things we do, and then, poof, it's
Right.
all, yeah.
Right.
So it's a practice, right? I mean, it's really a lifelong practice, how to live into um, your reason for being, your soul purpose, SOUL, not SOLE, SOUL.
Mm-hmm.
I often say parenthetically, the editor on my book and I had a great deal of difficulty around the word soul
Mm-hmm.
when I said something like your sole purpose, because they wanted to correct me to SOLE. And I was saying,
Really?
that is not the word I'm after. So, and yes, I understand the difference in the parts of speech, but I am intentionally using SOUL. So then it occurs to me that people may not know that that's what I'm intending unless I actually pause to spell it. So, I think some of this is the practice, the ongoing practice of discernment, right? What is my sense now, to the best of my capacity? What is the sense I have now that my gift for the world is fill in the blank? Like in these moments, I think this is to what I am called. We can't do everything, and therein lies a real ache and frustration for us if we don't remember that, because we
Mm-hmm.
look at the immensity of any one of the problems and then we look at the multitude of predicaments that we're in. Predicaments meaning they aren't solved. It's not make a list, do typical problem solving. You will find out how to restore the Colorado River, right? I mean, these are deep conundrums, these are deep predicaments. And not there's something that belongs to you. There's something that belongs to me. There's some reason I have gifts that are going to be called forth or that are being called forth. So, what are those? What are those? In the best that I can understand them as of now. And then to center myself around that and to keep coming back to, you know, this is the gift. This is the gift I bring. And maybe it is for helping people connect to each other. Maybe
Mhm.
that's the gift I bring, and to keep coming back to that so that when we are overwhelmed with everything that's coming in, we can acknowledge the sadness that we feel um, when we hear about the loss of the rainforest in New Guinea. We can acknowledge that, and we can hold and send as much um, well being as we can into that place in the world. And also remember that the way we honor Earth is by receiving those gifts from her. And those are gifts of beauty and wonder and deep connection. And so to not accept those gifts,
Mm.
I think Robin Wall Kimmerer would probably say something like it's very rude.
Mhm.
Earth is there pouring forth this beauty, and we're walking by as if nothing is happening because we're in our heads
Mhm.
about, how we're going to fix something that is beyond our capacity. So I'm trying to straddle between a no, never mind, just let it go. It's somebody else's work. I'm not saying that.
Mm.
I'm also not saying it all belongs to us. We're saying we're planting seeds. We're all seed planters. And there's a prayer you probably know well that we plant seeds that will be harvested far beyond our lifetime, and
Mhm.
we are harvesting what others have planted. And
Yes.
so if we're focused on one to the exclusion of the other, we're not completing that whole cycle that we're being invited to complete, right? We're part of this. I think, I don't know, would you say, I feel like sometimes we just think, our lifetime is the be all and end all of everything, right? And it all started when I was born, and it all has to be done before I die. And, like this is the
Yeah.
most important slice in the world. We don't quite see ourselves really as part of a stream, as part of a whole, as part of this ongoing web, this fabric being woven. It's like this slice is all I'm thinking about. I hope we're contributing to paving the way, or paving is not the word I want, but I hope
No.
we're, yeah, unpaving, maybe
Planting
depaving.
seeds, yes.
Yeah,
Mhm.
I hope we are contributing to some stepping stones that are well beyond our lifetime, that we won't know. We won't know their impact. And that's hard for us in this modern world, to give up the idea of knowing whether or not I made a difference in what the results were.
Mhm. Mhm.
Um, so,
Yes. Yeah.
yeah.
Well, I have been doing this work of purposeful memoir with people. I don't know if you've looked into.
Yeah, say more about that. I did hear,
Yeah.
I mean, I read a little bit that you posted about that.
Yeah. So it started with trying to align the personal, collective, and planetary stories and get people to think about their personal story as unfolding against this larger backdrop, weaving those stories together. And then going back into ancestral stories and how we stand on, what our ancestors, as you say, planted, and then thinking into the future. So, how can we use what we learn about the past to understand the present and to step more intentionally into the future that we want to create intentionally? And so lately, what I've been doing is really thinking a lot about the future and following Rob Hopkins. I don't know if
Hmm.
you mention him in your book, but
I
I've been.
don't know either, but I follow him, and we do. There's another conversation we could have about resilience and the work that we do, and I'm doing some work with eco villages.
The
And
transition town.
yeah,
Yeah. But
yeah,
so his latest two books were very future oriented and
yes.
thinking about using our imagination and how important our
Hmm.
imagination is. So given my position in education and, the gift that I have there to bring, I started offering a class called Writing the Future, with a double meaning of the word right, which I've been using for a while. And it's interesting to try to get people of any age to imagine an ideal future and then think about how to get there. So this is what Amanda Scott calls through-topia, right?
Yes.
So we're finding our way through.
Yes.
And the more I do this, the more convinced I am that this needs a lot of energy behind it, because especially in our time of AI, where, the AIs are just amplifying what is and not thinking about what could be, because they don't make things up. Only we can make things up and be original. So I'm feeling that this is a very important path to explore, and to see if other people will add some energy to it. And
I love this. I love
yeah,
this.
I
Yeah.
think it feels to me like leadership work, and it feels aligned with what you're talking about as the work of leaders, to
Yeah.
think back and to think forward and to find the way through. Yeah.
And so yes, so affirmation, affirmation for what you're saying. I love what you're talking about, and have great respect for Amanda Scott and the work that she does, and
Mm-hmm.
did an interview with her on Earth and Soul, um, and I live in a co-housing community, and we are working on resilience, and we brought some of Rob Hopkins' work into one of our recent gatherings together to do that kind of future imagining.
Mm-hmm.
In part of what maybe we'll say for people who may be listening and don't know that, this is about not just bringing all these gloom and despair scenarios forward. Many of those may be true. In fact, some of them we're almost know will be true. There are certain things that are, it'll be an amazing surprise if they don't go awry.
Mm.
And there is all this other that we can help bring forward. And that's, I think, so important in that work, because some of what we might want to bring forward already has little pieces of it. There are already little seeds planted, and so we can further those. All right, I'm sorry, I wandered around there.
No,
Maybe
well, so what did you
leadership.
what are you referring to with the little seeds planted?
I
What are
was
you
just
thinking?
thinking that, you know, um, an example of it might be that we're imagining a future that is much where the systems around us are fuller and richer and lusher, and forests are not sort of deprived of community with just some sparse trees and overrun by invasives, and thinned regularly and harvested out, where forests are honored and preserved for the role they play in the community. And there are places where that's true, is what
Mm-hmm.
I'm saying. And so, can we bring attention to those places where that's already happening?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And then ask that question, how does this serve as a model for what we can bring into the future? And it also reminds us it's not an impossibility. Otherwise we're like, well, seas are going to rise because the ice is melting and storms are getting worse and it's going to be too hot. And, I mean, it's true.
All of that.
It's just not all that's true.
Right. Right. So what I'm doing with the college class is starting from research on what is, and the whole depressing story,
Yeah.
and then research into what could be and what already is, as you're
Mm-hmm.
saying. So solutions
Mm-hmm.
that are already underway or have been imagined, and then using those as the jumping off point for the imagining of, mission accomplished. We're there
Terrific.
in this thriving
Yeah.
world,
Yeah.
and life is so much better.
Yeah.
And I think that's, I mean, we're just fed this constant diet of dystopia,
Mm-hmm.
Well,
Mm-hmm.
in terms of future sci-fi visions that are in the media.
Right. Right.
And our
Yeah.
some of our leaders of industry and commerce putting all this money into just getting off Earth, right? Just let's go to Mars.
Oh,
Yeah.
exactly. And let's put these big, panels in space where we can redirect sunlight to Earth
Yeah.
so that we can figure out how to generate more solar energy. What could possibly go wrong, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
But I
So,
want to say, if I could, Jennifer, I want to say something about leadership there, just to note. You know from reading the book that I spent a lot of time in the world of leadership because that's when I was in large corporations. That's what I had responsibility for was leadership training, leadership development, working with senior executives, et cetera. So I thought I knew a lot about leadership and, had
mhm,
studied all the various models. What I think so often those have depended on is the capacity for an individual to draw on their own experience and background and knowledge, and then to um, apply that to whatever their particular organization is facing. And it's way, way, way too small.
mm,
It's way too small. Depending on what I know, or what you know, or even what just you and I know together,
mhm,
um, is way insufficient for the kinds of mega challenges that we're facing.
mhm,
So part of our work, I think you're really naming, is to draw on the past. What's the wisdom of the elders? That
mhm,
maybe, Robin Wall Kimmerer in Braiding Sweetgrass talks about you have to go back along the way and pick up some of the important pieces that were left behind. What are those? What are those important pieces that we've left behind that really are instrumental for a future that would be life giving?
mhm,
And then what is that we do not know? And that means what do other humans know that we do not know? Um, Preferably, the more their experience is different from ours, the more knowledge, the more diversity they bring, the more wisdom they can bring.
mhm,
And what does the living world know? How do we sit with? How do we begin to understand what a forest knows?
mhm,
And how can we bring that into our way of thinking? So I think in some ways Janine Benyus nods at that in her work on biomimicry. Um, and yet that is, to me, there's a little bit in that about solving human problems
mhm,
by drawing on the wisdom of nature. Maybe an interesting question is how do we listen into what Earth is wanting to happen? And how could we be co collaborators with her
mhm, mhm,
rather than what do we want to do to? How will I save the earth? It's not a lot of humility in that, is there? I mean, but that's how we talk, right? It's up to me to save this, whatever, fill in the blank, right?
mhm,
So I think there's so much we have to learn about the come from place in our leadership. And so leadership, I think, has to be deeply, deeply humble,
mhm,
and just really held that the past, the people of the past had great wisdom. The beings of the past and the present have great wisdom, and there's an unfolding that has a wisdom of its own
mhm,
that we're invited to listen into. And if it comes out of my head, you know, especially if it comes out of my head and not my heart and soul, right? Especially if it comes out of my head, it's going to be way too small. It's just way
mhm,
too small.
mhm. Yes. So the word emergence is
Yeah.
coming to me. Yeah.
Yeah.
What wants to emerge in this time of unraveling that we're living through,
Yeah.
and what will be best for the entire community, the
Mm-hmm.
Earth community.
Mm-hmm.
and not just one species, humans,
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
and that fiction that humans can thrive in the absence of the thriving of the entire web of life. It's astounding that we still think that way.
Yeah.
Uh, our wiser selves, our higher selves, know that this can't be true, and yet we're caught in this sort of rut of
Yeah.
business as usual, as Joanna Macy said. Yeah.
Yeah. And the examples are so profound. They're not even things that, we have to think hard to say, what are we breathing here? Where
Mm-hmm.
is that coming from?
Mm-hmm.
I am drinking water from the Potomac River. We live on the Potomac. That's where I am drinking water. And it is within me and it
Mm-hmm.
becomes me. Just like this, the plants themselves are becoming my cells. There is no separation.
No,
It can't be. It
right.
can't be. And yet we somehow honor this individualism and, pride of being able to pull ourselves up by our bootstraps and,
Mm-hmm.
and then I think, then we're left lonely and heartbroken and, really broken people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And the poisoning of the earth, water, and air, imagining that wouldn't come back to our
Right,
bodies. Like,
right,
yeah. So I
right.
think, I mean, I actually, one thing that makes me hopeful is that we do know this. We know
We
it. We just
do.
know it sort of with our heads, and it hasn't descended into a
Yeah.
place where we'll act from it.
Hmm.
And I'm curious what that will look like. And I think it may happen.
Yeah. Well, and I think you're right. I think it is especially hard for us who, I've spent years um, in this world of trying to think my way out of challenges and to sort of center myself or center other humans in the narrative. So it's work.
Mm-hmm.
It is work. Even if I want to, it's work to decenter myself and
Mm-hmm.
to really examine my way of thinking. And I won't, I think I won't ever get to where I want to be. Um, that said, I think I can keep moving in that direction, and maybe enough that, when you and I share it with each other, then we open another little view,
Mm-hmm.
another little portal that, uh, I hadn't latched onto until I heard you say it or
Mm-hmm.
whatever. So I think I come back all the time to community and how important community is
Mm-hmm.
in helping us because we're sitting here saying we don't, we can't do it alone, and then we're somehow wanting to go alone when it comes to like changing our mindset. So
Mm-hmm.
probably not going to work.
So you do that, right? You create spaces for community.
That is absolutely the hope. I wrote Earth and Soul because this is the conversation I wanted to be in. And so, more than anything, I want to support people in whatever way I can to be in this kind of conversation like you and I are having. That's
Mm-hmm.
what I do in my retreats. That's what we try to do in our physical community where we live here. And, you know, um, anything I write, I mean, I write on Substack. That's my hope is to kind of keep creating this community where we're supporting each other in this way. And it's a practice of getting out of centering myself again. I don't want to
Mm-hmm.
be like I wrote this book and now it's all about me and how many copies do I sell, and I really want to remember that I wrote it because I wanted the conversation. So people are having a conversation about it even if I'm not part of it. As much as I love to be part of it, I'm thrilled. You
Mm-hmm.
know, I'm like, book groups, yay.
Yeah, you have a discussion guide for book groups
Uh-huh.
in the
Yeah.
back of the book.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. But also, it's interesting that the conversation you're having about things like soul and mystery, it's happening outside of conventional religious communities.
Mm-hmm.
And that seems important too. I don't know, you know, what your relationship is to conventional religion and what you think of. I mean, I know that some religions are really taking the climate situation seriously and are having these conversations. Um, and they are, to me, they seem like they have the potential to bring a lot of people together. So I am paying attention to that possibility, but yet I can't locate myself within them. So I don't know how you feel about that.
Yeah, yeah. I'm on a little hiatus right now, but for the past 6 years, I've had a monthly Church of the Wild
Mm-hmm,
that I started and continued to lead to do exactly what we're talking about, to invite people out into the world. I mean, that's what we do when we do Church of the Wild. We come together and we share a little bit about a theme. We have 30 to 40 minutes of silence and we listen. We listen to the more than human world. And then we share a little bit and talk a little bit. And it might be we might share poems or dances or songs or drumming or, or just conversation.
mm-hmm,
Um, and the intention is to just have a place where together we can hold that those connections are important. That is what is alive for me. That's what helps me feel deeply connected to the sacred, to the holy,
mm-hmm,
is
mm-hmm,
that connection to the living earth. You were talking about sitting on a stone,
mm-hmm,
how can you sit on a stone and not, I mean, I'm sure you can't, but how could
mm-hmm,
anybody come and sit on a stone and not have this sense of deep, deep, deep
mm-hmm,
time, that is so beyond our capacity to comprehend. So, yeah, I don't. I am totally supportive of people who find their space in conventional, traditional ways of exploring their faith. I spent a lot of time in churches,
mm-hmm.
and it's not where I am in this moment. Yeah,
Yeah, I love
but
the
I
idea of
do.
a
Yeah,
church of the wild.
yeah,
It really appeals to me.
yeah.
I wanted to read one passage as we come to
Oh,
a
good.
close, and this was one that really jumped out at me. So, if we continue to if we continue to see power as the capacity to act in alignment with the invitation of the universe, then we must begin by accepting our soul's calling that will guide us to transformative action. We cannot reimagine ourselves from our current worldview. We cannot rationally reinvent ourselves. We must connect to and be transformed by mystery beyond our knowing. The source of power is always flowing from spirit, whose very breath gives life to the dream of the universe. I think that's so beautiful and
Mm,
so beautifully said.
thank you.
And the idea of transformative mystery that we can't control and that we just need to open ourselves to is somehow very liberating. It
Mm,
just kind of takes a lot of weight off
yeah.
our shoulders. And I think a lot of environmental activism has been about, and social activism has been about, what can we do? How do we do it? How do we make change? How can we, use our agency to get power and make change? And it
Hmm.
seems very liberating to just let that go and
Yeah.
relax into just a receptivity to all that could be.
Hmm.
And that seems to me, that seems to be linked to our imagination and our
Mm,
capacity to dream.
hmm.
And
Hmm.
to, in our dreams, we're not in control. And that's
Yeah.
the magic and the mystery. And we connect with that every night, every time we go to sleep, we're in that realm. So it seems to me maybe what we're being called to now is to bring more of that into our waking life
Hmm.
and just let it happen. Yeah, I don't know if you would agree with
Oh,
that.
I love that. I love that, Jennifer. Yes, that's beautifully said, as to let it, let
Let
it
it
be.
be.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah,
It's the
yeah.
Beatles sang. Um,
I know. And you can go way back to thinking about the mystics and the wise elders who've tried to tell us this through generation upon generation, and somehow it's
yeah.
always hard for us to hear. Um, and I am, I think that's particularly important for people who care so deeply and who have spent so much of their lives as activists and then struggle to feel that they've accomplished what they're
Yes.
supposed to accomplish, that they have fixed the things that they set out to fix. And, they carry a heavy weight.
Hmm.
Um,
Hmm.
and so to go into the space as you're describing it there of, feeling freed from even knowing if what you're doing is really the right thing to do, and yet trusting that it feels that it is, that you're listening as deeply as you can, and you're stepping into that space with a trust that what happens is beyond your capacity for knowing or even understanding.
Hmm.
It's out of your dreams, as you're saying.
Hmm. Yeah. So maybe we just need to open our channels and, be a vessel for what wants to flow through us
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and do the best we can in each moment. You know.
Yeah, and I think we know glimmers of that, right? I mean, we've all sat with someone and something, listening deeply to maybe a concern they had or whatever, and somewhere, from whence we know not, some bit of wisdom comes out of our mouth, right?
Hmm.
That we
Hmm.
say, and it's just right, and it's just in the right moment, and we're like, I didn't even know I knew that. I don't know where that came from.
Hmm.
So, and those are really incredible experiences. So I think what is that opening that we have and that trusting that we have, that we don't have to think it all up, we don't have to make it all up. uh, that's what the woman in the cave, right? She's, here's the chaos,
Hmm.
here's the chaos before me.
Hmm. Yeah. And there's also an extraordinary patience there. It's like, it's unwoven. Well, I will keep weaving. I will get back to work. I will do what's mine to
Right,
do.
right, right. And a trust that a new image will be given.
Hmm. Yes.
Yeah,
And that it will be a thing of beauty.
right,
Yeah.
right. Yeah.
Oh, well, I think that's a wonderful place to end. But thank you so much. This has
Oh,
been
thank you. I've
one.
really, really enjoyed being with you. And yes, I think we could probably talk for a few more hours.
Well,
So,
maybe we will. I'm interested in your other book, which I see over your shoulder there, right? Did you
uh-huh.
you edited a book about trees?
No, this is a co-authored book. It's a book that came out this past year. This is oops, sorry, this is the draft copy, but Beth Norcross and Beth founded the Center for Spirituality and Nature 10 years ago. And we
Oh.
created a course on the spiritual wisdom of trees. And then this book came out in 2025, Discovering the Spiritual Wisdom of Trees. So it's a co-authoring experience, and that was really rich and wonderful. And so you heard me reference trees a few times. They find their way into my heart.
Oh, mine too. So maybe we'll
Yeah,
have another conversation. I'll have to read that book.
that would be terrific. Yeah, I would love that. Yeah. So
Okay. Well, I will put all your contact information, how people can get a hold of you and follow your Substack and
thank
all
you.
of that. But thank you for all you are and all you're bringing to the world. So
Yeah.
appreciated.
Well, thank you. Thank you too. And thank you for the work you're doing with the students and these gifts that you are bringing to them. So much,
Yeah.
much, much, much blessing on that work.
Thank you. We need
Yeah,
it.
yeah, we do, you know, again, um, that's stepping stones to the future, even if we
Yes.
don't know exactly what it looks like. So grateful to you. Thank you.
One step at a time.
Right.
Right.